Hello everybody. Today I am going to go over how to save and load data for your game using serialization in Unity 3D. So first, before we do that, let's take a quick look at the scene I have set up. So first of all, I have these three input fields. Each one's a different piece of data for your player. We got their level, their health, and how much gold they have. As well as I have two buttons, one to save the data to a file, and one to load the data from a file. So we go and look at our event system. I have our manager script on it, and as you can see, I have two scripts here. Let's go take a look at those scripts. So the first script is the manager script. It has three public inputs: the level input, health input, and gold input. All three of those input fields I showed earlier, as well as this private data class called run data. Now, data class is just a class I made. It's serializable and it's outside of model behavior. All it is these three ints and a function to initialize it. So let's go back to the manager and we'll see what it does. So our start function, what we do is we initialize our run data, as well as set each one of our input fields to have the correct text of the variables they represent. As well as we have three public voids that will update on on the input box change. It will call these and update our variables inside of run data. So let's run this really quick just to show you. Right now the buttons do nothing, but say I want to change our health to 500, our gold to 6,000, and our level to 25. That all works. But now you're probably asking, how do we serialize? Well, let's jump right into it. So let's open up our manager script. I'm going to be doing everything in the manager script because I want to map it to these two buttons, and it's just going to be easier that way if I do it in here. But you don't need to do it in here. You can have separate scripts that will handle your loading and saving, and then just call the functions and make sure they're public. But I'm just going to do it in here. So the first two things you need are going to be two new using statements. The first one is using system.io. The second one is going to be system as well, .runtime, .serialization, .formatters, .binary. This one's a little bit long, but this one will get you the formatter you need, and this one will let you access files. So I'm going to start with loading. Before I go and do anything in the Unity scene, I'm just going to do all the coding first. So I'm just going to start here with loading. Now, I was going to make it public, but since I'm going to be mapping it to a button, I don't need to make it public here. So, load data. Alright, so before you start loading data in, you want to make sure there's a file there. You don't want to start loading data from something that doesn't exist. So, let's start off by doing if file dot exists, and then next we're going to be doing our data path. So the data path I'm going to use is one built into Unity. It is the application dot persistent data path. Now that is built into every project, and where it leads, so let's go back into our scene for a second. Where it would lead depends on what you named your company. So if we go into Edit, Project Settings, Player, right here is the name of your company. Now, it's defaulted to default company, and what happens is when you have something that will end up saving somewhere, it will make you a folder in your local low app data. And the folder will be called this name. I'll show you a bit later the file and how to get there. It is currently not there at the moment because I have not saved anything yet, so it hasn't gone and made the file yet. So let's get right back into it. So next, after we have that, you can put any path you want there too. I'm just using persistent data path because it's pretty simple to use. We want to make an addition to it. So plus. And then the next thing will be our file name. So the file name that I'm going to use is just simply data. As well as you gotta put the extension, and I'm going to make it a dat. So that is our if statement. We're checking to see if it works there. And so if it finds a file, it'll go into this. So if it finds a file, then we gotta start loading our data in. So the first thing we need to do is get our formatter set up. So to do that, we just call our binary formatter. We name it. I'm just going to call it BF. And we initialize it. So equals new binary formatter. Our next step is to open the file that we just found out exists. For that, we gotta use a file stream. Oops. I'll just call this one fs equals file dot open, and then we put our data path again, which will be application dot persistent data path plus data dot dat. So make sure when you're typing in the name of your file there, you get capitals right. Now, ideally you just don't put capitals, but I'm a stickler when it comes to organization, and I really enjoy capitals when it comes to the first letter of a word in variables and things like that. That's kind of a bad habit, but if you were like me, make sure you have down to the capitals right, because it is case sensitive. Next, we need our file mode. So what we're doing here, oops. That was a tough word for me to type. So our file mode for this will be open. So now that we have our file open, we're ready to read data from it. Now, what I'm going to be saving out is not the individual ints themselves, but rather the class. It is much easier to save and load classes than it is each individual piece of data, because when you save out a class, you just have to load in one thing and then access that class to get the things you need. Instead of loading in multiple things that you need, you can just load in the one class and be done with it. So the class I have made is called data class. So we gotta make a new one to take the information we're loading in. So data class data equals new data class. And then now we have our new data class. We're just going to be setting it to the class that we want to load in. So data equals our BF for our binary formatter that we had made dot deserialize. So this is going to deserialize our serialized data that we stored. And then we're looking to deserialize FS. Now, we also got to identify what is in FS, like the data we're grabbing. We got to tell it what it is. So we're going to tell it that it is a data class. So it's going to load it. It's going to load our data class that we have saved, and then set it to the data that we had. So now that we have the data all loaded, we don't need the file open anymore. So we got to make sure that we close the file, which is fs for our file stream that we made, dot close. You do not want to keep your files open. Make sure you close them after you're done loading everything you need. So next, what we need to do is we have everything loaded, but nothing is set yet. So we want to take our run data dot level and make it equal to our data that we loaded in dot level. Our run data health, set it to our data health. And just do the same thing for every piece of information that you have in here. Now, what you could do is make a function inside your class that takes in another class and then just does all this inside that one function. So if you ever have to call it, you're just calling one function instead of going through and doing all this every time you need it. And that is loading in your data. Now, I have to update all of our text boxes. So just our level input will be equal to our run data dot level to string. So I forgot to tell it that I want the text to be equal to that. Run data dot health to string. Now this part's not needed. This part's just for the sake of the way I had the tutorial set up. So you could do this outside this function with the information that you grabbed. This is just using the data that I just grabbed. That's what it turns out to do. All right. So that is that. That should load everything. If it finds a file already there, it should load all this. Now we can move on to saving. Saving is mostly the same thing. So let's just get started. So void save data. So at first we want to set up a way to kind of defend ourselves in case something just goes wrong. Much like how we use that if in the load, we're going to do something else here. We're going to use a try catch. So what a try catch does is it will try to do everything that you have inside the try, and if anything fails or gives an error, it will immediately jump to the catch. So if something goes wrong here, the catch will happen. and make sure that it doesn't just break the whole game. So here in our catches is going to be debugging, debug log, there has been an error. And so letting the user know that there's been an error saving, please try again, instead of breaking the whole game. So let's go into our try. And first thing we need to do is get our binary formatter. Oops. I'm just going to call them the same thing. BF equals new binary formatter. And we need our FS stream again. So file stream FS equals. Now, what we're doing here is the same, roughly the same thing, but instead of using .open, we're doing .create. Now, create is going to make a file in the location we put, and if the file is already there, it's going to overwrite that file. So, again, we put the location of where we want to create this file. And this part is going to be the name of the file, which we're going to call it data.dat. And again, make sure that this name is the exact same as this name, which is the exact same as this name. You want to make sure that these are 100% identical, or else it won't work. So now we have our FS creating that file. We want to go and save our class that we currently have running in the game. So let's make a new class, just to make sure that we don't do anything to the class we already have in case an error does happen. We're going to create a temp class just to hold the data as we save it. So there's our temp class. Then we're just going to set it to be equal to the class that we already have. We're just making a complete copy of the class that we have running in game. And then we're going to take our formatter, and instead of deserializing, we are going to serialize our data. And we need to give it our stream that we have, as well as what we're saving, which is going to be our data. And like that, our save's complete. So much like when we're loading, after you're done saving, you want to make sure that your stream is closed. You do not want to leave those open. They can create a lot of problems. Now, that's if everything goes well, that should work. But if things don't go well, we're just going to debug log error saving. And that will, if something goes wrong with the try, it should go to the catch, and the catch is just going to display there's been an error. And save should not go through. So that is it for those two classes. Now the way I'm using my saving and loading is through buttons, so I'm just going to quickly make those two public classes. Public save, which is just going to call save data. Public void, and then public void load, which is called load data. Now, if you're doing something along the same lines where you have a button, that will save and load, you want to make sure that you turn off the button or make it so the player can't rapidly click the button while it's saving and loading, because that will open up multiple instances of it saving and loading, which can be which can create a ton of problems. In the tutorial, I'm just not going to worry about it. So let's go back to our scene, and in our buttons, just add our click events for the save and load. So this one will be save, and this one will be load. Alright, so we open it up, they get set to the defaults, and we want to change these to something other than default so we make sure it works. So we'll be level 100, or yeah, 100, with 1000 health and 9,255 gold. A nice number over there, just to see how accurate our saving is. So let's try to save. And usually you want to put a debug log up so you know when the save's complete. I'm just going to assume that it has completed. Double check to make sure that we had no error message pop up. Now, since we have created a file in the persistent data path, it should appear there now. So let's go check it out. So we want to go to percent app data percent, and it'll bring you to your roaming. You want to go back to your app data, local low, underscore tutorial, because that's the name of my company. And this instead of clicking on underscore tutorials, you would go to whatever your company was named in the player data. And then here is my name of my project, and there's my data. So, unlike saving your data to a text document, where everything's just level equals 10, gold equals this equals that, which is very easy to read and very easy to change and edit, when you have serialization, it doesn't become as easy. We have our 3 variables, which you can see the names of, but if you're the average player and you want to get ahead in the game, kind of want to, I want to be 100 levels more, and you open up this, you're not going to be able to really know what you need to change. So it becomes a lot harder to mess with your data. So let's go check to see how the loading works. So when I click load, we should have 100, 1,000, and 9,255. Right now we have our default values, and let's see. 100, 1,000, 9,225. 9,255. So as you can see, it loaded all the values correctly from our serialized saved data, and that is serialization, saving, and loading in a nutshell. If you have any questions about the tutorial, leave a comment down below, or if you would like to suggest a topic for my next tutorial, leave a comment as well. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.